Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Kofi, and to all of the NAACP family for giving us a chance to speak unfiltered with citizens. We've really tried to run a very grassroots campaign. We've done over 350 public events this year. We've encouraged people to cover them on Facebook Live. We've had over 200,000 Virginians watch our town hall meetings and other events that way, and that's really what democracy should be about, not 30-second TV spots, even though we hope you've seen our 30-second TV spots. Let me just say, I've lived in Alexandria the last 6 years. I had the honor to work with President Obama the last few years, but I'm from Charlottesville, Virginia. And one of the things that I was very aware of growing up in the shadows of Thomas Jefferson as a child was two things about Virginia. One is that Virginia is the birthplace of American democracy, and two is that Virginia is the birthplace of American slavery. Throughout our history, we have been at the forefront, both of the fight for justice, liberty, and equality for all, and we have unfortunately been in the lead on some of our deepest sins as a country. And in each generation, we decide which of those traditions is going to define us. An arc of expanding liberty and justice, or that of repression. We've made great progress. We're a more diverse state than we've ever been in my lifetime. We're the only southern state to have soundly rejected Donald Trump in the last election. And we're one in which we continue to see citizens every day stand up and march and make phone calls and resist an agenda of hate and bigotry that we see from the White House. We've seen it in standing behind our brothers and sisters from immigrant communities who every night face the fear that parents will be separated from their children by ICE raids, where we see attacks on trans teens, and where we see in our new Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, one of the greatest steps backwards for civil rights in generations. Few things capture the difference between where we stood a year ago and today than an Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, and an Attorney General, Jeff Sessions. And we continue to see not just the dog whistles, but the bullhorns of racism when they say one approach to the very real and tragic situation of an opioid epidemic that's mostly affecting white communities, but then a rhetoric out of the 1980s when it comes to drugs in inner cities. It's long past time for us to get rid of this double standard and approach all with compassion that understands that addiction is a health crisis and not a criminal crisis. We see 3 of our brothers and sisters in Virginia die every day from the opioid epidemic. I was at a clinic recently with a mother of a 6th grade kid who's had 14 classmates this year lose a parent to the opioid epidemic. What we see from this tragedy is a very different conversation about our Commonwealth. One that says it's time for us to make sure that we are expanding that sense of opportunity and equality for all. Virginia is the home of the American dream for my family. My dad was the son of Italian immigrants, and they grew up pretty poor. But he got a scholarship to go to the University of Virginia. So for him, Virginia was the American dream. It was the source of that equality and opportunity. He worked 2 work-study jobs and came out debt-free. And along with my mother, started to build assets to be able to own their first home and move into the middle class. Today, unfortunately, that dream is not a reality. The same kid today, born of an immigrant family or not, will work hard, get themselves to college, work, study, and come out with an average of $35,000 in debt. And within 5 years, we'll be told that to stay competitive, she will need at least a master's degree and take on another $15,000 or $20,000 in debt. And for the next 15 years, instead of building those assets in a home, they will see themselves paying off a cycle of debt that continues. We believe, unfortunately, this may be about to get worse. Not because of Donald Trump, in this case, not because of Republicans or Democrats, but because over the next 15 years, automation and technology could disrupt 35 to 50% of all jobs in Virginia. We are going to see what was once a one-time trajectory of get your training and move into the workforce to now being a constant revolving door of workforce training. That's why we have announced the most ambitious reform agenda to our education system in generations. We need to move from a K through 12 system to a P through 14 system that offers at least 1 year of universal pre-K and at least 2 years of free community college, trade school, or apprenticeship program for every young person in Virginia. This will give people the flexibility in some cases to matriculate into a four-year university as a third year with half of the student debt. For many people, they may need to become an income earner in the home sooner than that four-year delay. And this is also something we believe that can be part of reducing the school-to-prison pipeline that we see affecting so many communities across Virginia, bringing more of the career and technical training skills in earlier, and freeing up the K through 12 years not to be about SOLs and SOQs, but the kind of critical thinking skills and project-based development that is actually the key for employability going down the line. But it's also the key to active learning. And we see way too many kids today getting disciplined because they're being told to sit still for 7 hours a day, when that is not the natural behavior for a kid to be doing. And I know this because I was a hyperactive kid. And I was in a great public school system in Albemarle County where we still had PE, we still had art, we still had recess, we still had tons of outlets for the kind of activity and empirical learning that I loved. And when I did get a little too active, because of the structural privileges of race in class that I had, my teachers were likely to tell me that I was dynamic, that I was cute, that I was a future leader. And that put me on a pathway to the Ivy League and to Congress. But I know today there are so many children, particularly poor children and children of color, sitting in school today with my exact same traits, being told to sit still for 7 hours a day, who are going to act up the same way I would if I was told to do that. But instead of being on a pathway to the Ivy League, they're on a pathway to the principal's office, to a legal referral, and to being convinced, even by the 3rd grade, that they're a bad kid that stands outside the rules and outside the law. We need to reinvent that educational space to understand there's a future congressman in that kid. There's a future Ivy Leaguer in that kid, or a glazer, or a painter who can work a working class job. We have an opportunity today to do 2 things, and we must be able to walk and chew gum. One, we must resist this agenda of hate and bigotry. But if all we do is resist, on some level we're letting Donald Trump define our agenda and who we are. We must combine that resistance with a positive agenda of economic opportunity and dignity that leaves no race or region behind in Virginia. I believe part of how we fight back against hate is with opportunity. Thank you for letting me detail that today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. I just wanted to follow up on the education question. You propose a plan to provide 2 years of debt-free college or trade school. How much do you estimate that will cost, and how will we pay for it?
Well, one of the nice things about our plan is the Richmond Times-Dispatch, which is a fairly conservative paper, has noted that we are the only candidate from either political party that has given the details of our plan and said how we're going to pay for every single dollar of our plan. We have a combination of spending cuts, about a third cutting spending, particularly within the lottery program and some of the hedge fund fees and the retirement accounts. 2, the closing of tax loopholes that we think dramatically benefit big corporations at the expense of small corporations, because bigger businesses can afford huge legal teams to go in and make sure they pay effectively no tax rate at all. And we need to see the kind of job creation from smaller businesses. And we do ask millionaires to pay a little bit more, and that fully funds not just the community college program, but also the universal pre-K system, 8 weeks of paid medical leave, where we would cover 2/3 of the pay during that 8-week leave, as well as clean energy, debt forgiveness, and other programs that we have on the books. So we're willing to put revenues on the table, because anyone who's ever worked in the private sector will tell you, if you don't invest, your business is not going to grow. And for us, we have underinvested in education and infrastructure. Unfortunately, we've had a Republican legislature that is an anti-growth party. The Republicans have become an anti-growth party because they are so intent on consolidating wealth at the top that it ends up being something that undermines the pathways into the working and middle class. Now, the truth is, we believe that the free community college pays for itself. If you actually look over a 5 or 6 year period, we end up making more by people moving into the middle class and paying taxes. Many of my conservative brothers and sisters seem irritated that too few people pay income tax. But one of the ways to change that is to stop paying poverty wages, raise the minimum wage to $50 an hour, create more pathways into the trades, and not only will you increase dignity, but you'll increase revenue for the government as a whole.
leaks and spills, it's not a matter of if, but rather a matter of when. Since January 2017 alone, there has been 14 reported spills in 10 different states. Do you oppose the construction of Mountain and Atlantic Coast natural gas pipelines? And if so, what alternatives do you propose that are environmentally friendly while creating new jobs in the Commonwealth?
Thank you for the question, Michael. I do oppose both of the fracked gas pipelines that have been proposed across Virginia. And not only that, I've refused to take $1 in political contributions from Dominion Power or any of the electric utilities. It is beyond me that you can have a political system where state-regulated monopolies are allowed to give unlimited contributions to the very legislators that are supposed to be looking out for us. I've had the honor of working in some incredible countries in West Africa, Central Africa, Afghanistan. Overseas, we call that corruption. Here, we call it campaign finance. It is a system that has to be broken. But part of this is certainly about the environment. It's definitely going in the wrong direction in terms of climate. It's in the wrong direction in terms of clean water in our trout streams and elsewhere. That's why I called for the Section 401 Clean Water Review. Many people didn't even know that existed, but advocates in the community had done their research, and we were willing to help give that voice. Yes, it's a misuse of eminent domain for corporate gain, but most of all, it is a $6.7 billion bet in last generation's technology when Virginia needs to be looking at the businesses of the future. This is not where the economy is going. It's going towards clean energy, energy efficiency, and distributed energy. Having ratepayers today spend $6.7 billion on these pipelines is like going to someone right as digital cameras were becoming popular and saying you should bet your 401k on Eastman Kodak. It's just the exact opposite direction of the economy. And this is where both the Republican Party and my Democratic opponent are missing out. They're costing Virginia jobs, they're costing Virginia businesses, and they're dragging us into the past. We are losing the solar industry to North Carolina. We are on the verge of losing the wind industry to Maryland because people are stuck on this monopoly approach. Part of it is the problem with monopoly itself. They're still stuck. It's not that they're bad people at Dominion. They just have a bad business model. It's a monopoly that says one company should decide which fuel source we'll use, how we'll extract it, how we'll transport it, over whose lawns to go into your house, and how much you'll pay for it. Today, every homeowner and every farmer should be part of the new energy economy and a share economy for energy. We could be creating businesses and jobs all over Virginia, including in many of the areas that are falling behind economically. It's a great opportunity for us to do the right thing, and unfortunately, we see Richmond going in the wrong direction.
Thank you, Tom. So now we're going to open up the floor to audience questions. So if you have a question, just raise your hand, and Courtney will come to you. Oh, and just for clarification, so we're doing a little bit of the gubernatorial candidates. We're going to be switching back and forth. Tom is going to have 20 minutes, and then the next candidate is going to have 20 minutes. So focus all the questions to Tom at this point. Thank you.
My name is Cindy Johnson. I'm from Fairfax County, and I'd like to know if you support an independent commission for redistricting, after this next census, and if so, how you would recommend convincing the General Assembly that redistricting reform is needed.
Thank you for the question. So I think we have a huge opportunity in the next few years to try to modernize and rejuvenate democracy in Virginia. And there are three big areas, and you just touched on the biggest. The biggest is going to be gerrymandering. In Virginia, we are a 50-50 state that is trending blue, but we have a 2/3 Republican legislature, not because of our politics, but because of an algorithm that was thought up in Washington, D.C., that went through and carved out which house will be in which district. It has absolutely destroyed any room for pragmatic solutions, and it's choking off growth and choking off quality of life in Virginia. Now, I have guaranteed a veto of any partisan maps that are put on my desk, but I've also guaranteed a veto of any bipartisan maps that are put on my desk. If the two parties come together to protect incumbency, that is not good for democracy. But the third thing I've promised is the most important, which is that I'm not going to wait until those maps get on my desk. I'm going to spend 2 years before we get there barnstorming the state, making the case in the bluest counties to the reddest counties of why this is anti-democratic, and try to create a situation where it's toxic for any legislator to come home and explain why they want to be part of a rigged system. So we're going to get an independent commission there. We're going to win that fight outside of Richmond. We're never going to win that fight inside of Richmond. One, Virginia 2021 deserves a huge amount of credit for changing the politics on this issue. We want to build on it. Second is certainly getting money out of politics. I'm going to run out of time, but I believe in publicly financed elections, as close to that as we can get. The third is voting rights. We have a deep history in Virginia of voter suppression, not just the disenfranchisement of those serving time, but also all of the scare tactics and other things that go on. I've gone to the technology community in Virginia and said, I want Virginia to be the first 100% voter participation state in the country. We have had a deep history of voter suppression, but we've also been at the forefront of democracy. And I will tell you this, it may sound pie in the sky, but Oregon is already at 83% voter participation, and they weren't even a state when we were inventing continental democracy. So we've got to be able to catch up. They're a wonderful state, by the way. But whether that ends up being by mail, online, same-day registration, what have you, we need to get out of playing defense, get on offense. There's so much cynicism about our democracy. Independent districts, getting the money out of politics, and 100% voting.
Hi, my name is Anand Srinivasan. I'm from Loudon. The question I have for you, sir, is how would you plan to work with the Republicans? Because I'm a Democrat. I want all the legislation to Democrats, so that's not reality. So what is your plan to work with the Republicans across the aisle so that we can show common sense, common ground, and we can move the state forward? Thank you so much.
So I'm pretty unusual in politics for the following reasons, which is that I've actually spent more of my life as a peace negotiator than as a politician. And I've been in countries where people were literally killing each other for decades and figured out how to get them to sit down together. We've got to be able to find a way to get Republicans and Democrats to be able to sit down together. And the fact of the matter is, and this is what's encouraging about the campaign, is that we actually aren't as far apart as we think. Not on every issue. But I mentioned before the issue of trade school and apprenticeship programs. That wasn't my idea. One of the things I learned as a peace negotiator is first listen before you propose. And when I went into communities of color around Virginia, one of the things I most often heard was, whatever happened to the trade schools and the apprenticeship programs? Why isn't community college a better pathway? And then I would go into the heart of Trump country, and people would say, whatever happened to the trade schools and the apprenticeship programs? What happened to community college? The very groups that Donald Trump wants to divide against each other are actually united around a bold policy of economic opportunity. One of the things I think many of the journalists and political pundits get wrong about our campaign is they often try to say that we're a left campaign. I don't mind the label, but it's from people who are absolutely clueless about Virginians. They don't care about if you're on the left or the right, they only care if you're helping them move up or down. And what people want is more opportunity and less debt. The same thing on criminal justice reform. It was a third rail even in the Democratic Party to touch for years. But the fact of the matter is conservative communities are having a very different conversation about criminal justice reform. Frankly, because we can't afford it, it's dehumanizing. Now, is there something unfair about the fact that we're only having a different conversation because it's affecting whiter and conservative communities? Yes, that's unfair. But does that mean we're not going to take that moment to come together and bring common sense reform to the table? Clearly, we're going to do that. Same thing with Medicaid expansion. Now we see the criminal justice system disproportionately affecting immigrant communities because how it can affect status. This is something where, again, we can take groups that Trump wants to divide, and we bring them together not by having more moderate ideas, not by having weaker ideas, but by having stronger ideas, and I think that's how we get things done.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. I have a question about criminal justice reform, and it's specific, particularly to felonies. So the grand larceny threshold in Virginia is $200 or more. And I think it's only 2 states in the whole United States that still keeps that threshold. And it's been the same in Virginia for the past 30 years. And the governors have introduced it for the past 6 years and it continues to fail. So what's your perspective in increasing the grand larceny threshold? Because federal is $1,000 and most states is $500. So how do you plan to increase it from $200 to $500 or even $1,000? Or that's the key.
This right here. Stealing this constitutes a felony in Virginia, almost nowhere else. An enormous amount of our public docket is taken up with nonviolent marijuana offenses, possession offenses, and cell phone theft. That's time not being spent going after domestic abusers, sexual assault, violent criminals, other things that are crucial to serve and protect. We have got to get these outdated laws off the books, and we've got to begin to convince people, including conservative communities. I actually think the people are there. It's the legislators who are still stuck in a 1990s mentality that locking more people up for longer is somehow making us safe and a good investment. But in Virginia, we have a problem in each stage. I mentioned the school-to-prison pipeline. Then we have these laws on the books that make no sense at all. Then we give people too little indigent legal defense, so they're not getting much of a lawyer. Then we have these regressive bail laws that means many people in Virginia are in prison without ever having been convicted of a crime in the first place. Then a few months later, you've lost your job, you're standing in the community, and someone comes to you with a piece of paper and says, I have good news. You can go home tomorrow. All you have to do is plea out for the time you've already served. Well, meanwhile, what you're signing is a statement of guilt, and you're getting your license suspended. So then what happens? You go home, you lost your job, you're getting your crappy minimum wage $14,000 a year job, you're on your way to that job, you get pulled over, particularly if you're a person of color, and now you're driving with a suspended license. You are now a repeat offender in our system. And we're going to spend $300,000 in the next decade incarcerating. Does anybody in any conservative district think that makes sense? No, I haven't met anyone yet. So we need to break this down in each stage. We need to look at the bail laws, the indigent legal defense, the regressive laws that need to get off the books, including raising the felony larceny threshold, and make sure that we have fewer people getting into trouble in the first place because we're creating a school system that allows for greater opportunity. We're going to take it on at every single one of those steps.
Good afternoon, Mr. Perry. Questions on education. I'm not a big fan of endorsements, it's rack, just everyone in the whole world endorses one person. But now and then I do look at some endorsements. And the Virginia Education Association did not endorse you. So I'd like to give an opportunity of why the voters should vote for you that maybe the VA did not see at their state convention.
Well, I encourage everyone to watch the state convention. If you go and look at the actual teachers who were in the room, we got half a dozen standing ovations. That did not happen for Ralph. I think it's very clear where the teachers are. There's some politics in there we can talk about, but I think what we've seen is enormous support from public teachers across the state. I was really proud of the fact that the very first day of the campaign, we launched with an event with public school teachers in Danville, Virginia. We ended that day up in Fairfax with public school teachers from across Northern Virginia. They have been central to our campaign for day one. We've had the boldest campaign out there in terms of education reform that puts teachers back in charge of their classroom, and the only person who's put revenue on the table. While I have a great deal of respect for Ralph Northam, the fact is he's now had 5 debates to say whether he's willing to put the revenue on the table that's needed to support our education system. Every single one of those times, we had a clear plan. We said we're willing to put revenue on the table for both education and transportation. I think that's what leadership is about. Leadership is about starting with the question of what solves our problems, including in the education system. Since 2007, Richmond has balanced the budget using gimmicks. And one of those gimmicks is to artificially change the ratio of support staff to teachers in the classroom. What that means is the very kids that most need help and support, because they're crying out for support and have to be taken outside the classroom for whatever reason, instead of having a counselor there to support them and get them on the right path, they're going straight to the principal's office, and then they're getting referred to law enforcement. These are the kinds of things we've got to end in Richmond. We've got to invest not just in our teachers and in good pay for them, but in our counselors and support. And I think that's why we have such a great amount of support from teachers around the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Got that a little early there, but that's okay. So what we're going to do now is transition over to Ralph Northam, but in the meantime, we ask for your closing remarks. Which will be 2 minutes.
2 minutes. First of all, thank you so much for coming out today, and for those who are tuning in online. We're only 17 days away from this primary, and it's a really big deal. It's a big deal to me personally, because I hope to be your nominee for governor. But it's also a big deal across the Commonwealth, and I'll be very honest. Primaries are normally a very sleepy affair in Virginia. It's a small group of people to vote, and it's not a group that looks like all of Virginia. It is an older, whiter, suburban group of people that normally choose the nominees. I think one of the questions that everyone is asking, right up to Donald Trump himself, is has the politics changed? Has the election of Donald Trump changed this question of what the political landscape in Virginia looks like? We believe it is a massive political statement. If we see a surge of voters in this primary, we certainly hope people will vote for us. But it's most important to vote. If we see that the numbers are larger and that we have a coalition of people that look like all of Virginia choosing our nominee, that statement is not just going to define where Virginia is, but there are a lot of Republicans in Congress right now that are trying to decide how much to distance themselves from this agenda of hate. If what they see is a tidal wave coming next year in 2018, starting with this first statewide election in the country of the Trump era, it is going to be noticed, and you may see people start to distance themselves from the Fairfax division. As I said before, we have an opportunity to do two things. We can resist and draw that line and say we will protect our vulnerable neighbors, and also have a positive agenda of opportunity and dignity that leaves no race or region behind. The best way, ultimately, to defeat Trump is not just to look at him, but what are the dynamics that led to his rise in the first place? And that's a combination of economic anxiety and racism and sexism, structural no work. We call those out, we address them, whether it's in the criminal justice system, educational inequalities, voting systems, or other things. I believe 10 years from now, we will look back at one of two realities. Either the election of Donald Trump was the beginning of the unraveling of everything we care about, or it was the last gasp of a dying racist ideology from which emerged a more just and inclusive Virginia than we have ever seen. My hope is that begins June 13th. I hope you will go and vote. Thank you very much.
If you would just give us a couple minutes, we're trying to get Ralph Northam on the line. So just a couple seconds. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been invited to make a quick announcement. As many of you know, many of us in this county, Fairfax County, would like to see the name of the high school that serves the Mason District, the Jeb Stuart High School, named after a man who took up arms against the United States of America in defense of African American slavery. We would like to see that name retired, and we would like to see our high school rechristened as the Barbara Rose Johns High School. And the school board is going to make a decision on the 22nd of this month, of June. And it would be a great thing if you feel that Fairfax County, after having a school system since 1870, would have to have one of its 26 high schools named after a female or named after a person of color. Get in touch with the Board of Education member who represents your district. Get in touch with the at-large members and tell them to retire Jeb Stuart and to rechristen the school as Barbara Johns. You can find all the information you need on the Fairfax County Public School System website. Thank you so much. June 22nd.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
acknowledgement, right? Okay, now we're going to switch over to the other gubernatorial candidate, Ralph Northam. Thank you for being with us, Ralph. Really appreciate you taking the time out. 2013, Ralph was elected as Virginia's 40th lieutenant governor, receiving 55% of the vote. Ralph was the first Democrat since Tim Kaine in 2001 to be elected lieutenant governor of Virginia. Mr. Northam is a doctor, a U.S. Army veteran, and a former Virginia State Senator. Ralph, if you would just take 7 minutes just to speak to our audience and kind of let them know about your campaign and what your platform is, we appreciate it. And then we're going to switch over to the campaign.
How long do you want me to take, sir?
7 minutes.
Oh, okay, good. Well, thanks. First of all, thanks for having me, and thanks for all of you taking time out of your busy schedules on Memorial Day weekend. I know we probably have some veterans among us. As you know, I'm an 8-year veteran of the United States Army, so I thank all of you for your service and wish all of you a safe and happy Memorial Day. Just a couple things I would point out. First of all, I think there's good news for Democrats in 2017 that we travel around the Commonwealth and listen to a lot of folks, and there's a tremendous amount of enthusiasm, energy, people asking what can we do to get involved, how can we help. And I really think a lot of this is that we're seeing is because of what we witnessed in 2006, a campaign that was really based on hatred and bigotry and fear and discrimination and a lot of misinformation. And people are literally standing up and saying this is not the country that we love, it's not the Commonwealth of Virginia, that we're going to accept this as the new normal. So not only if we work together do we have an opportunity to elect a governor, a lieutenant governor, and an attorney general as Democrats, but we also have a chance to pick up a majority in the House of Delegates. And as you know, we have 34 Democrats right now. There are 17 seats that are currently being held by Republicans that Hillary and Tim won in 2016. So 2017 is going to be the year for Democrats. It is time for us to get back on offense and stop playing so much defense. Time for us to get more proactive rather than reactive. As we listen to folks across the Commonwealth of Virginia, a lot of the things that I hear are the following. Number one, people want a job that they can support themselves and their families with. They know that it's impossible to support themselves on $7.25 an hour, so raising the minimum wage is very important. We've done very well in Virginia. We've brought in over 200,000 new jobs to Virginia in the last 3.5 years. Our unemployment rate has gone from 5.4 to 3.8%. It's the lowest that it's been in 9 years. But our economy is obviously not working for everybody in Virginia. So we've got to continue to encourage workforce development and also inclusivity, which is very important, and has been very important to Governor McCullough, Mark here, and myself. People also want to know that their children have access to a world-class education system. They want to make sure that their families have access to affordable and quality health care. With what we're seeing in Washington right now, a lot of people are very concerned, as am I. And it's more important than ever that a person that understands health care be at the table in Virginia to make sure that all Virginians have access to affordable and quality care. They want to make sure that they can live in communities where there is racial and social justice and equality. That's very important. I mentioned inclusivity earlier. We live in a very diverse society, so that means that we need to be welcoming in Virginia. We need to have our doors open, our lights on. And then finally, people want to live in communities where there are not guns on every street corner. We just had a state policeman murdered yesterday in Richmond. There's too much of a proliferation of guns. We as a society are going to need to stand up and talk about a responsible gun ownership, things like universal background checks. We need to bring back the one gun a month law that Governor Wilder put into place. Criminal justice reform is very, very important, stopping that pipeline from school to prison. And finally, we have redistricting that's going to occur in 2021. We need to stop the gerrymandering. So that means that if we can get a majority back in the House, that would be great. And then in 2019, get a majority back in the Senate. But if we don't, worst case scenario, it is very, very important that we have a governor in the office who's a Democrat, and they can make sure that our lines are drawn fairly. So those are some things that I hear around the Commonwealth. We have a great team. I've been around the block before. I ran in a very tough race back in '07 when I ran for the Senate. I served 6 years in the state Senate. I ran for re-election in '11 and was successful. And then I had a tough election in 2013. So we need someone that can win in November. That's very important. We need someone that will stand up against what we're seeing in Washington right now, just the recklessness and the hatred that can't come into Virginia. We need someone that believes and has been unwavering in progressive Virginia democratic values. And finally, we need someone with experience in Richmond. And that's what I bring to the table. And I appreciate the opportunity to be with you all today. I look forward to answering your questions. And all of us together, we need to make sure that we continue to move Virginia in a positive direction. So thanks, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Okay, you still have 2 minutes, but if you want to move on to questions, we can do that.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, so the first 2 questions will be from the moderators, and then we'll open it up to the floor for people to ask their own questions. So the first question is this. The Congressional Budget Office's recent analysis of the GOP American Health Care Act has determined that the plan will result in 23 million Americans losing their coverage. Likewise, individuals with pre-existing conditions under the AHCA lose coverage. As Governor of Virginia, what steps would you take to ensure that Virginians have access to quality health care?
Yes, thank you. And if you don't mind me asking, how long do you want me to address the question? I just don't want to take too much of your time.
Yeah, no problem. So each response will be timed to 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, first of all, as a doctor, and I've taken care of children and their families for over 25 years, no individual or family in Virginia should be one medical illness away from either financial demise or death. And it's just as you said, the new plan that the Republicans in Washington have put on the table is totally unacceptable. It's pitiful, and up to 23 million Americans would lose coverage, especially those with pre-existing conditions would be very vulnerable. So, I, as a doctor, will tell you that there's some good things about the Affordable Care Act. No more pre-existing conditions, being able to keep our children on our policy until they're 26, the emphasis on access to mental health care, the emphasis on access to preventive care, and access to women's reproductive care. Those are all very important. One of the things that I have been working very hard on with Governor McAuliffe and Attorney General Mark Herring is expanding Medicaid. We have 400,000 Virginians presently who are working and don't have access to coverage, and that's immoral. Also, from a business perspective, every day that we don't expand Medicaid in Virginia, we're not only leaving on the table, but we're giving to surrounding states who we compete with over $5 million a day. So since January 2014, we have literally given away over $10 billion with a B dollars. That's unacceptable. So your question was, what do? I bring people to the table. I make them understand that it's immoral not to have coverage for health care, and it's also, from a business perspective, very irresponsible. So we need to bring that money back to the Commonwealth of Virginia. That's what I'll do as the next governor. The other thing that I need to mention that is I think, important for people to know, if they do repeal the Affordable Care Act in Washington, that means that Medicaid will have a block grant. We've been very frugal with Medicaid spending. We're 47th in the country. And it is very, very important that someone be at the table that understands health care so that we can make sure that all Virginians have access to quality care.
Thank you, Ms. Raymond. I was right on the money, actually, 2 minutes. The next question is about education. Correct me if I mischaracterize your proposal, but as far as I understand it, you've advocated for Virginians to get free community college and then work that debt off by working for 2 years for free. How exactly would that work? And couldn't this possibly make it harder for the former students to actually pay their bills and continue to provide for their families? And couldn't this create a certain people who are relying on the state for support, even if temporarily?
Well, thank you for the question. Just a couple points I would make. I am an educator. I teach ethics and pathophysiology at the medical school in Norfolk. It is very important. I've also worked very hard with K through 12 and also advocated for pre-K education. So we've done a lot of good things regarding education in Virginia over the last 3.5 years, and I want to continue that. So first of all, what we need to talk about is the jobs of the 21st century. Those are what we call STEAM-related areas: science, technology, engineering, the arts, math, and healthcare. Things like cybersecurity, unmanned aerial systems, biotechnology, personalized healthcare, data collection, data analysis. Those are where the jobs are. So that's number one, to understand that. Number two is we need to train the workforce for those 21st century jobs. And then finally, how do we make it accessible? How do we make it affordable for everyone? So we've done a lot of things with higher education, making sure that our colleges and universities are more affordable. This plan that you referenced is called the G3 program. That's for access to community college. We know that there are some very good, high-paying jobs that you don't need a 4-year education for. And we want to make sure that we incentivize individuals that want to go into these high-demand jobs are able to do that. So the G3 program is get skilled, get a job, and give back. That means that you can go into a high-demand job, if you become certified, your 2 years of community college are paid for, and then you give 1 year back of public service. Now, that can be in local government. It can also be in a high-demand job area, or it can be in a part of Virginia that's in high demand. So, and this is the way I had my education paid for. The Army paid for my college, paid for my medical school, and 6 years of training after that. And then I gave back 8 years of service to the United States Army. So this is a way, there are no free lunches out there. We have to talk about how we pay for these programs. And my G3 program is paid for, and again, it will allow people to go to community college free of charge and then get back 1 year of public service.
Okay, well, thank you. So we're now going to turn our attention over to the audience. Yes.
Sure.
Let us know if you can hear the audience member.
I think I can hear. I can't see anybody, but I can hear, so we're good.
Okay. Hi. My name is Kanan Srinivasan. I'm from Loudoun County. My question is related to working with the Republicans in Richmond. I asked the same question to the other candidate. My question to you, sir, is what's your plan to work with Republicans across the aisle in Richmond to move common sense, common government legislation to become law? Because ultimately, we have two parties, we have to work together. What would be your plan? Thank you.
It's a great question, and that's where experience comes in, and that's where relationships with legislators. As you know, I've been in Richmond for 10 years now. I served for 6 years in the Virginia Senate, and now 4 years as Lieutenant Governor. Let me give you an example of how things work in Virginia. I had the thought and listened to a lot of Virginians that said they would like to go into restaurants and not be exposed to secondhand smoke. I talked to Governor Kane, who was the governor back in 2008. He said, you know what, Ralph, you're a pediatrician. You would be a good person to introduce that legislation and promote it. So in 2008, I introduced it in the Senate. It passed in the Senate. It went down to the House, and as we say, it caught a bit of a fever. They said it was too much government in our lives, and I'm sensitive to that. Anyway, they defeated it in 2008. In 2009, I went and talked to people from both sides of the aisle, and I told them about how dangerous secondhand smoke was. I talked to them about facts like that there'll be over 1,000 deaths per year from secondhand smoke. And so they said, you know what, Ralph, you're a doctor, you're right, let's get this done. So in 2009, I introduced the same legislation. I had it passed in the Senate, it passed in the House, and then Governor Kane at that time signed it into law. So it's important to realize that we have to be very firm and believe strongly and secure in the values and principles that we believe in, but nobody has a monopoly on ideas. And so that means that you have to be able to listen and agree to disagree, and then at the end of the day, do what's in the best interest of Virginia. That's my reputation. I know people realize, they understand that I'm a proud Democrat, that I fight every day for progressive Democratic values. But at the end of the day, if we're going to get something done, for example, the smoking ban, or talk about climate change and sea level rise, which I've worked a lot on, or talk about concussions in athletes, which I led the way on that. You've got to be able to sit down and have the relationships, bring people to the table, and the Virginia way is to agree to disagree, but then at the end, do what's in the best interest of Virginia. And that's my reputation, and that's how I plan to move forward in the next 4 years.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sophia Smith. I'm actually a criminal defense attorney, and my question deals with the grand larceny threshold at only being $200. I know it's been introduced in Virginia for the past 6 years. It continues to be shot down. The federal threshold is $1,000, and surrounding states is at least $500. Do you have any plans on how to get that actually passed in Virginia, where the grand larceny threshold will be increased to more than $200 for it to get felony?
It is an excellent question, and it's something that we have talked about. I have a plan for criminal justice reform, and one of the things that I have proposed is to raise the larceny felony limit from 200 to 500, or even higher than 500. But let's just think about this. If I was with y'all today and walked out and took one of your cell phones and didn't give it back to you, I could be charged with a felony. So that's wrong. And so that's one of the things that we have included in our criminal justice reform program. As a broader concept, let's talk about the pipeline from school to prison. We need to do everything that we can to interrupt that. Let's talk about implicit bias. There's a tremendous amount of racial profile. Let me give you an example of another thing that I think is very bothersome. Virginia right now is paying, or spending rather, over $67 million per year enforcing marijuana law. I would also tell you that African Americans are 2.8 times more likely to be picked up for smoking marijuana than someone who's white. So there's a lot of racial inequality, a lot of implicit bias that's going on out there. And so, you know, think about, let's look at decriminalizing marijuana, other things that we could use that $67 million for. Let's look at teenagers. I take care of a lot of teenagers that end up in detention centers. Let's keep them in school. Let's keep them in their communities with mentors and counselors. That's very important. And then finally, how do we keep people from ever getting to that position? And that, I believe, happens through access to early childhood education. And I have worked very hard, and I will continue to make sure that every child in Virginia has access to pre-K. And let me just explain to you how that works. Children learn to read up until the 3rd grade. After the 3rd grade, they read to learn. And if they're not reading in the 3rd grade, they're at a tremendous disadvantage, and they'll never catch up. So I tell people there's a tremendous learning potential before kids ever get to kindergarten. And if one family has the means to send their children to pre-K and another one doesn't, that's what starts the gap between the haves and the have-nots. So we just opened up 13,000 more slots this year to pre-K across the Commonwealth. And if I have anything to do with it over the next 4 years, every child in the Commonwealth of Virginia will have access to pre-K. So it's all about looking at the big picture and interrupting that pipeline from school to prison. We can do better, and we will in Virginia.
Thank you. We're actually out of time with you, but if you can take the next 2 minutes to give some closing remarks, and also just to kind of follow up on the last point you made regarding universal pre-K. How much would that cost, and how would we actually pay for that? If you can include those comments in your closing remarks, we'd appreciate it.
Yes, I wish I had a little bit more time to talk to you about it, but I applied for a federal grant 3 years ago of $70 million. I was awarded that grant, so we have used that to jumpstart pre-K. Obviously, we need to talk about how to fund it in the future. And this is something that's kind of, I think, interesting and rewarding, is that pre-K education is a nonpartisan issue. Republicans and Democrats agree that that's really important for economic development and that everybody should have that opportunity. The other people out there that agree is the business community. They are very involved right now and want to make sure that's a reality. So the answer to your question, we pay for it through both public funds, through grants, which I just spoke to, and also to private enterprises and businesses that want to be involved as well. So it has to be of quality, and there also has to be some transparency and accountability. And as long as we can prove the importance of pre-K education, then we're going to have buy-in from both sides of the aisle, we're going to have buy-in from the taxpayers, and we're going to have buy-in from the private sector. So it's a win-win situation for everybody. And just finally, in closing, I thank you all for being here today. I know it's Memorial Weekend, and there are a lot of things you all could be doing. but these elections have tremendous, tremendous consequences. And if you don't believe that, just look at the clown that we have sitting in Washington. We can't continue to let that happen. We need to make sure that we have someone that will stand up to the narcissistic maniac that we're dealing with on the other side of the Common River. We need to make sure that we have someone that knows how to win statewide elections. We need someone that will stand up for progressive democratic values, which is what I've done for the past 10 years. And finally, we need someone with experience. So I bring that to the table. And I thank you all for being here today. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you. It would be a privilege to have you vote for me on June the 13th. The most important thing is for us as Democrats and Virginians is after the 13th, we need to all come together. We're all in this together. The big prize is going to be on November the 7th. We need someone that will stand up to Washington and be able to take Virginia to the next level. Thank you all so much. Have a great weekend, and God bless all of you. Thank you so much.
All right, so we're going to transition over to our sole Republican candidate representative for candidate Ed Gillespie, C.J. Saylor, who is the statewide coalition's director for Ed. So, C.J., thank you so much for being here. I'll just give a quick introduction of Mr. Gillespie's background. So Edward Gillespie is a Republican, served as the 61st chairman of the Republican National Committee and counsel for the president of the George W. Bush administration. Gillespie, along with the Democrat Jack Quinn, founded Quinn, Gillespie and Associates, a bipartisan lobbying firm. Gillespie is also the founder of Gillespie Strategies, a strategic consulting firm that provides high-level advice to companies and CEOs of coalitions and trade associates. CJ, if you would just take the next 7 minutes to kind of give us a quick introduction about Ed and what this platform is about. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you, President, for inviting us out today and having us. Kofi, just, we want to thank you for your leadership here in the Fairfax area. And thank you guys for putting this important forum together. And also thank you to the Democratic candidates that participated today. Before we get started, Ralph Northam had mentioned the officer that had passed away last night. And so we want to just, on behalf of Ed Gillespie and our campaign, give a moment of silence and a moment of prayer for the Officer Walter that passed away this morning. Okay, thank you for your time. I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan, in a crime-ridden area. I had an opportunity to go to a really good school in Detroit, Michigan, Martin Luther King Junior High School. I had an opportunity to be a part of the Student Government Association there and get involved in civic service because I always looked at what we do, what the candidates are doing is public service. And where did that go? Where did it get lost to where we actually engage our community and actually listen to solve problems? So I was SGA president and on our student council and had a lot of fun doing that. And then I wanted to go to college. And what better place for me to look at, which was Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. For those of you who are not familiar with the school, it's predominantly African-American male college. Dr. Martin King Jr. is an alumnus there, Spike Lee, Samuel L. Jackson, and many others. And it was there on those grounds that I really started to shape my political ideology. As an African-American growing up in Detroit and going to Morehouse College and stepping on campus looking at conservative principles, I was laughed out of the classroom, especially being on the grounds that our great civil rights leader, Dr. Martin Luther King, walked. But I wanted to look at a different way for our community to look at issues and to solve problems. For a long time, my grandmother would tell me, hey, when you go vote, just go vote for the Democrat. And I didn't understand, well, should we use critical thinking and find out why? see if this person has our best interests. And so at Morehouse, I was able to really shape my critical thinking and to really look at candidates and look at issues that really best affect me and where my thinking is. So I took that opportunity to start one of the first Republican chapters at Morehouse College. And it was met with a lot of criticism, a lot of back and forth, but I had a lot of fun doing it because we really engaged in the issues. We really talked about what's best for the African American community, what's best for the Latino community, what's best for communities of color. So after that, I had an opportunity to move to New York and try my hand at acting, and that didn't work out. So I got my degree in political science. After that, interned at the Heritage Foundation, worked for Senator Rand Paul, and then just over the summer, I got a call from Ed Gillespie to meet with him. I met Ed Gillespie about 5 years ago, and we were talking about engagement in communities of color, and I thought he was spot on for a Republican. And let's all just address the elephant in the room. Republicans have not done a good job at engaging communities of color, but when I saw that Ed, 5 years ago, when he wasn't even running for public office, was serious about this, I thought that it would be a great opportunity to engage and to listen. So after several interviews and several talks, I took the role of coalitions director statewide. And what that is in my role, we have about 35 coalitions all throughout the state, ranging from veterans to small business owners, every ethnic minority community you can think of. And we use these as a way to engage communities and to hear from them and to really discuss the issues that Virginians care about, and to take that, what we find out, and work with our policy team so Ed can shape his policy as a different kind of Republican running for governor here in such a tumultuous time. So these policy groups, we invite everyone to join. Everyone here is invited to join our policy group, whether you're a veteran, if you're a small business owner, if you're an educator. We want to hear from you. We don't want this to be a divisive campaign. We want to set a different trend for this campaign. And we want to discuss the issues and find out what's going to work best for you. One of the things that's important that Ed is running, and he's been said that he feels called to run, is that just job growth in Virginia. 5 years ago, Virginia was in the top 10 for job growth. In the last 5 years, we've dropped to the bottom 10. That's not good. And as a millennial, someone who moved here 10 years ago for job opportunities, that's important for me. And so I think when we look at a governor, we look at someone who is pro-growth, someone who supports the small business owner who wants to continue to grow jobs, which will continue to help our communities grow. It's something that was near and dear to me. And so Ed Gillespie will be a governor for all Virginians. That's our campaign slogan, for all Virginians, and we want to hear from you, discuss the issues, and come up with solutions that are solvable. So with that, thank you for having us today. I'm happy to answer any questions, and we invite all of you to think about joining our coalition, because we want to hear from you as we shape our policies for the next coming months.
The first question is going to be firearms control. The question of firearms regulation often is viewed as a very polarizing issue, yet almost every poll conducted by a reputable, non-partisan organization show that most Americans actually support some form of common sense regulations. Mr. Gillespie appears to be in the minority on this issue, and that actually opposes any regulation. Is that an accurate portrayal of his position? If not, is there any legislation that you will support?
Yeah, thanks for the question. First and foremost, Ed wants to support our Second Amendment rights, right to bear arms. That's first and foremost. In terms of different policies and legislation to look at, and what he would support in terms of gun control is something that we're still exploring. It's something we still want to have those conversations about. We have a Second Amendment and a sportsman coalition in which we discuss these issues. So as of now, we're still looking into that, and we have not come on record in terms of specifically which legislation we would support. Of course, we want to leave that up to the General Assembly to discuss, but right now Ed's focused on hearing from all Virginians and taking his campaign to all Virginians as he is looking at becoming our next governor.
You have an additional minute if you want. Next question, I guess. So, the next question is, a joint study published by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities and the Economic Policy Institute in 2012 ranked Virginia as 15th in the nation for having the greatest disparity in income inequality. More recently, the EPI put on a study in 2016 that showed that 100% of all new income between 2009 and 2013 went to the top 1% of the state. This actually impacts communities of color as well as predominantly females in the job market. So I was wondering, is this a major issue for your campaign? And if so, what steps would you take to curb the rampant income inequality? Thank you.
Thanks, Michael, for that question. This is a priority of ours. Our policy team has been discussing this. Ed has been traveling the Commonwealth, meeting with your commerce groups from all over the state, your Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, your African, Black Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, to really hear from them and to get their assessment on what's really going on economically in our state. Ed put out a bold plan about a month and a half ago, which will cut taxes at 10% across the board for all Virginians. This is not a plan that we would look at the top 1% or the bottom income earners, but for all Virginians, across the board, 10%. And what that means is if you have a family of 4, that's $1,400 back into your pockets. And this is something that Ed has been committed to doing. And in terms of addressing the disparities, this is a campaign, again, it's all Virginians. I mean, we got to think about our folks out in coal country, our citizens that are, right here in Fairfax and even in Richmond, our urban populations. So we're going to continue to hold our listening sessions and our roundtables, but this is a portion of the campaign that Ed's committing to, and we think to get started with attacking and addressing that issue is with a 10% tax cut across the board for all Virginians.
Thank you very much. So now what we will do is we will open the floor to questions from the audience.
I'm very glad to see you here. I've always felt very strongly that it's a mistake for any group, particularly a minority group, to allow one party to take it for granted and for the other party to write it off. And I'm old enough to remember when there were a lot of Republicans around that I could vote for. Actually, there are still a few, but they're sort of low profile. Here's my question. How does Mr. Gillespie differ from Mr. Trump on the various issues that face our state? Will he be a Trump supporter or not? There's so many issues I'd like to get into, and really interested in specifics. I'm interested in broad, fuzzy statements of principle. I know that. Let's talk about issues. And let's just talk about the issue of climate change, just to pick one in the environment. How does Mr. Gillespie stand on environmental issues such as pipelines and coals and oilseed, oil and so forth? Be as specific as you can. Will he be a Trump man, or will he go a different path?
Oh, thank you for that question. Thank you. So to take a stab at your first question, and we are happy to be here. We're glad that Kofi and his leadership team was able to invite us out. And thank you for being here. Thank you for your question. Ed's going to be a governor for all Virginians. We've had opportunities to meet with a lot of different groups across a lot of diverse ranges and hold roundtable discussions to hear their issues. Just coming up this Wednesday, Ed's going to meet with the Urban League Young Professionals in Richmond. I hold a luncheon with some of the leaders there to discuss that. And then with Trump, he's our president. So how Ed differs is he's Ed Gillespie. He's not President Trump. We had an African-American pastor ask Ed the same question a week ago at a ministers' conference in Richmond. And quite frankly, it's the question that it gets answered, it gets asked all the time. And what Ed says explicitly is that I have my policies that are going to benefit Virginians. I'm not Trump. He's Ed Gillespie. And at the end of the day, Ed's going to fight for Virginians. And he said this publicly, that in this climate of controversy and different debates going on between what's happening in Washington and what's happening here in Virginia, it's all about Ed running for governor of Virginia to support and listen to Virginians. And in terms of climate change, it's an issue that Republicans are starting to come around to. I can't specifically answer your question. I would love to follow up with you and get your information and have our policy team directly get back with you. I don't want to leave this unanswered, but Republicans are starting to come around to climate change. But your specific question, I'd love to get your information afterwards and make sure we can follow up with you and do a job of ensuring that you get your question answered. Thank you.
Okay, my question and a comment, actually. I'm a graduate of Morehouse College, and I'm very proud of that fact. I finished in 1964, 68, I'm sorry. And I'm proud of the fact that I went to a college that was key in establishing and developing Dr. Martin Luther King. But when I look at the education that I received and the environment that I was in at Morehouse College, I know that Morehouse is open and diverse, but I can't see Morehouse College actually embracing some of the things that are, that, as our former speaker said, as 45 endorsements. Now, I would like to also ask a question about school vouchers, because for the life of me, I can't understand how school vouchers is really a benefit for education as a whole, because it seems to me that as you take money out of public education, that you're taking it away from public school system, which services most of the students. So give me an idea of what your position is on vouchers.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Morales, brother. Appreciate that. Well, one thing that Ed is passionate about is public education. And let's just say that from the beginning that he will support our public schools. He has a plan out that wants to ensure that our public schools get funding, that our teachers are compensated. We have an education coalition in which we bring in teachers from all backgrounds, whether you're pro-vouchers or not pro-vouchers, you're pro-charter or not pro-charter, and really here so we can discuss the issues and find out the best route that we can take the Commonwealth in. What we've seen from studies is that when you have charter schools and you have vouchers, students perform at a better rate. Now, this can be debated, and wish we had more time, but what we found is that when you have competition in schools, and you have more vouchers, it gives students the opportunity to have the options to flourish. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. In the neighborhood that I went to school, kids had to go in there it was a metal detector for students going to school. I was fortunate enough to get a voucher to go to a school outside of my district. And I was thankful for that because there was so much violence going on in the school that I went in. If I didn't have an opportunity to serve, I may not be here right now. I may be stuck in Detroit with gang violence because of the public school that was in my neighborhood. So I think it's something that is helpful, and across the board, it gives parents and it gives students just other options. And we don't want to take anything away from public schools, but we want to just provide other options and opportunities.
If I could take 30 seconds to ask a follow-up question on the school voucher. Do you believe that the schools receiving these vouchers should be held to any standards?
Yeah, so I think, sorry about that, I think when you look at any school that is receiving, with its local funding, federal funding, there should be some policies in place that measure results and that ensure our students are getting the best teachers, they have the best resources, and our teachers are fairly compensated. So we do think that the schools that are receiving vouchers, there should be a system in place that measures results for the gentleman in the back who would like to know exactly how does this work and is this a benefit in my particular community.
Next question. I don't know if this is on.
I'd like to know Mr. Gillespie's view on Medicare expansion, and if he's in favor of it, what's his plan to make that happen, and if he's opposed to it, why is he opposed?
Yeah, so in terms of Medicare, what's happening in Washington right now, you know, we're being very thoughtful and careful because of the high information around this issue. Right now, from where we are, the Senate will now be voting next on what's going to happen with Obamacare. But Ed has made it very clear that he wants to do what's in the best interest of Virginians. So we're going to continue to have that conversation on Medicare and what the effects will be on Virginians, and what we can do on a state level in case there's some things in the bill that we may not agree with. But as of now, we want to see what happens on a federal level with the Senate and what they decide. And if Ed's fortunate enough to be the Republican nominee after June 13th, we will then look at where we stand. But the main thing for us right now is hearing from all Virginians, hearing from individuals like yourself on what you think would be the best approach, particularly to your family. So right now, we want to see what happens with the Senate and their vote. Thank you.
Okay. We only have time for one more question, and then if you could maybe, if you see that when you stick around afterwards and really ask some follow-up questions.
Hi, my name is Tanika. My daughter just turned 18. She's going to be voting this year, and I brought her here so that she can hear like the different candidates. So I'm really disappointed that Ed's not here to speak for himself. So my question for her and I is, with Trump and everything going on, how do we know that what you're actually saying is what he actually believes in? And then the second question is, how do we know that Ed becomes the Republican governor candidate and becomes the governor? How do we know that he won't be a puppet for Trump?
Thank you for your question. Thank you for bringing your daughter out to this discussion. Well, for one, Ed is with family and was unable to be here this afternoon, so he sends his regrets for not being here. And we're all looking forward to working with Kofi and his leadership team to plan another one of these in the near future. Ed is fortunate enough to be the nominee after June 13th. We're committed to working with the NAACP to plan another forum in which Ed could be here, and you can get an opportunity to hear from him and ask him questions as well. But he does regret not being here today. And then to answer, how do you know? At the end of the day, personally, I think you do your research and take a hard look at voting for someone who really has your best interest at heart, someone who wants to be a fighter for you, and someone who's going to be a governor for all Virginians. And I can personally tell you, I've spent a lot of personal time with Ed and his wife, visiting churches, visiting communities, going to places where I grew up, and his heart is in it. I wouldn't be risking my, my reputation coming out to a community that I know has issues with Republicans to talk on his behalf. But I truly, in my heart, believe that he's someone who would be a fighter for Virginians, because I've seen him do it not publicly, and not just during the election cycle, but before that. I'm a man of faith, and I believe that he's someone who would fight for us. So, thank you for your question.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. Would you like to take a minute to make any closing remarks?
Yeah, just thanks again, Kofi's leadership team for having us out today. Again, Ed regrets not being here. We look forward to planning a future event. June 13th is coming around the corner, as the other candidates have mentioned. It's important to go out June 13th, vote for the candidate that you feel is best going to represent you, and we ask that you consider Ed Gillespie. He's going to be a fighter. He's not a politician. He has not been elected to public office. This will be a first time for him. And I think that he's someone who can get our Commonwealth going in the right direction. And I know the question comes up, you know, how will you separate yourself from Trump? How is he different from Trump? I think at the end of the day, and I just want to be honest with everyone here, at the end of the day, I think it all comes down to the individual that's running, you knowing and feeling in your heart that that person cares about your daughter, your family member, your co-workers, and that they're going to represent them for all Virginians. That's the thing I think on June 13th we should consider and think about as we go in and vote, and not necessarily thinking about someone that is not here running for governor, but Ed is. And Ed would love to have you consider voting for him. Thank you. We look forward to coming back and continuing this conversation. I'm going to stick around if I didn't get a chance to answer your questions. Have a great Memorial Day weekend with your family, friends, and thank you all for coming out.
Thanks, CJ. And thank you to all the candidates who left at this point, but really appreciate everyone, all the candidates that did take the time out to be here today. It's a really tremendous event, and thank you for all of you that decided to take some time out this Saturday and stick around. There's a lot of work went into this program, and so I'd be remiss if I didn't take some time out to thank Karen. I think she had to leave, but she's our first vice president and political action committee chair, and the entire political action committee, Michael Davis, Sean, Courtney, who am I missing? George, I think that's it. But also our communications team, for getting the word out. Evelyn, Sylvia, thank you for making a connection with Chantilly Baptist. Thank you so much, Chantilly Baptist and Deacon Otis. Deacon Otis, I think, might be in the hall. So, oh, there you are. Thank you so much. You guys were so amazing. We couldn't pull this off without you. If I could take a couple more minutes here just to kind of let you guys know about some of the upcoming events we have planned. This coming Saturday, June 3rd, our youth council is going to be showing the movie Birth of a Movement at First Baptist Church in Vienna. It's going to be a basically highlighting and recapping what went into the making, the impact of the making of the movie Birth of a Nation, the original one, and how that led to the birth of the KKK and how it gave that momentum. So it's pretty important documentary. On June 10th, we're going to have an education forum at Kings Park Community Library in Burke. That's going to be our regular meeting at 10 o'clock. But we're going to have the chief of staff of the Fairfax County Public Schools, as well as the vice president of the school board, there to answer the questions. There's been a lot of issues have been raised in the last couple of weeks about discrimination in teacher hiring, and we have some questions about discrimination within the schools and the atmosphere surrounding that. So really, this is your opportunity to engage the school board and see what their plans are for addressing some of these concerns. On June 18th, we're going to have our Father's Day brunch, jazz brunch at Hilton Garden Inn in Fairfax. Hope you can make it out to that. We have a lot of material out in the hallway there. It's our one big fundraiser of the year. A lot of effort is going into that. It helps to propel us throughout the year so we can continue to put on events and things like that. So tickets, you can purchase tickets today or you can purchase them online. And we also accept donations. So the slide, there's ways to accept donations. So if you can't make it to the jazz brunch, we really would appreciate if you were making donations. We also have t-shirts out in the hallway if you are so inclined. There you go, right? Oh, yeah. So we appreciate if you guys would purchase a t-shirt. They're only $20. Again, the proceeds go back into our organization. On July 29th, we're teaming with the Fairfax County Police Department to have a Kids versus Cops basketball game. Another way to kind of bridge the gap between the police and the community. Hope you can come out there, and if you have a son or daughter that's a teenager and might be interested in participating, come see me or come see Shireen, where she is, with her hand raised afterwards, and we could maybe get them signed up. And it's also going to be a cookout, so it should be a fun event. And lastly, on September 30th, we're our Veterans Affairs Chair, Nikki's very okay. She might let talk about Nikki. We're the Veterans Affairs Committee Chair. She's going to have another forum discussing some of the issues surrounding veterans in the community. So before I turn this over to Deacon Otis, I just want to close this out with some words of inspiration. I just urge you all not to bypass the primaries. A lot of people, you know, they don't vote, and then they say, why? And they say, because I don't like any of the candidates, but they don't realize or don't appreciate the impact of the fact that if they didn't participate in the primaries, maybe they didn't have a candidate in the end that they actually want to vote for. So don't bypass the primaries. Show up June 13th and bring a friend. Again, and if you're interested in joining our team, you've got a lot of hard workers here. We could always use some additional support. So if you're interested in joining the Fairfax NAACP, we're doing a lot of great stuff, and you know we could always appreciate another person to help support us. So, and thank you again. So Deacon Otis, if you would take some final closing words. Thank you again.
I'm on. I just heard I was supposed to do some inspirational closing remarks. I don't think so. You guys have had a great program today, and we just like to, on behalf of our pastor who is out of town traveling today, I regret not being here, but we just wanted to express to you and let you know that we welcome the opportunity to host this program today, and hopefully it met your expectations. And I guess other than the NAACP representatives and the politicians, I'm the only one that's speaking that's not running for anything. So I'm here at the church, so I have my ushers back there. We're going to take an offering now. Only kidding. Only kidding. But anyway, on behalf of my pastor and all of the members back here, we have our 2 members of our AD team. We have the vice chair of our board of trustees. We have Sister Sylvia, who is on your board here, is working with you. Brother Franklin and Sister Fane. We have quite a few members that are walking around in the parking lot, and they were just excited to host today and to be of help in this program. So we hope that it met your expectations and that it delivered the kind of information that is beneficial to you. So one thing that we will say, June 13th,